The afternoon sun beat down on the glass panes of the Gilded Terrace, one of New York City's most exclusive restaurants, located on the Upper East Side, where only those with a heavyweight last name could score a reservation. Megan adjusted her apron for the 10th time that Thursday, her fingers trembling as she folded imported linen napkins. Beside her, Karen, a 43-year-old waitress who had worked there for nearly a decade, gripped an empty tray so tightly her knuckles were white. The atmosphere behind the scenes was electric, charged with a tension that made the air feel heavy. Megan noticed that even Arthur, the manager, always composed and impeccable in his grey suit, was checking his watch every 2 minutes, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair in a nervous gesture she had never seen before. Karen let out a muffled sob, and Megan turned to her colleague immediately. The older woman's eyes were red and swollen, her makeup smudged by the tears that were still silently streaming down her face. She had been like this since the start of her shift, unable to hide the trauma of the previous night. Megan didn't know exactly what had happened. She was new here and still learning the unwritten rules of the place. But from the whispered conversations she overheard among the other staff, Karen had made a minuscule error the night before, something to do with the bread being served at a temperature slightly below what was expected. To any normal customer, it would have been unnoticeable, but that customer was not normal. Arthur approached the group of employees gathered in the kitchen, his expression grave. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper, but each word landed like a stone in the tense silence. Listen up, everyone. I need you all at your absolute best today. You know what's at stake. I can't afford to lose any of you. But I also can't afford to lose this restaurant. Mr. Henry Taylor isn't just the majority partner. He practically keeps this place afloat. And when his wife decides to show up, his word is law, absolute excellence, or there will be consequences. A chill ran down Megan's spine. She had heard the name Henry Taylor before. It was impossible not to. The real estate mogul had erected half of the most important commercial buildings in New York over the past 2 decades. His empire was vast, his influence limitless, and apparently his wife wielded that power like a weapon. Karen sobbed again, louder this time, and Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Karen, you need to pull yourself together. I know last night was rough, but we can't give her any more ammunition. She feeds on our fear, you know that. Megan saw Karen shake her head, but the woman was clearly on the verge of a breakdown. Her hands were trembling uncontrollably and her breathing was ragged. 10 years at this job, 10 years of dedication and professionalism, and a single customer could reduce this strong woman to a bundle of nerves. Just then, the side door to the kitchen opened, and a young woman walked in, looking around with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Megan recognized that expression. She had worn it herself a few weeks ago when she came for her own interview. The newcomer wore simple jeans, a modest white blouse, and worn-out running shoes. Her brown hair was tied back in a low ponytail, and she clutched a folder of documents to her chest like a shield. "Excuse me, I'm looking for Mr. Arthur. I have an interview scheduled for 3 o'clock. Arthur turned, his expression shifting from worried to something close to despair. He checked a nearby clipboard and sighed heavily. "Beatrice Adams. Yes, we have your name here, but there's been a scheduling error. Today is not a good day. We'll have to reschedule." Megan saw Beatrice's face fall, the hope draining from her brown eyes. The young woman took a step forward, her voice trembling but determined. "Please, sir, I really need this job. I've been unemployed for 4 months, and I have a 5-year-old daughter to support. I can wait as long as you need, but please don't send me away without at least talking to me." Arthur looked at Beatrice, then at Karen, who was practically hyperventilating, and Megan could see the mental calculus running through the manager's head. It was an impossible situation. Turning the candidate away would be cruel, but hiring her right now would be throwing her to the wolves without any preparation. Outside, the unmistakable sound of a luxury car's engine echoed down the quiet street. It was a sound Megan had learned to recognize in recent weeks, the smooth, powerful purr of a vehicle that cost more than she would make in 10 years. Everyone in the kitchen froze. Robert, the sommelier, peeked through a side window, and his face went pale. "It's her. The black Mercedes just pulled up." The effect was immediate. Karen began to hyperventilate, her hands flying to her chest. Two younger waiters rushed to check their appearances in any reflective surface. A line cook dropped a spoon, which clattered deafeningly in the sudden silence. Arthur made a decision. He turned to Beatrice with an expression that was part apology, part desperate resolve. "You're hired, effective immediately, but I need you to understand something, Beatrice. There is a customer about to walk through that door, and she is unlike anyone you have ever met. She will try to unnerve you, humiliate you, make you feel smaller than an ant. Your only rule is this: smile, always apologize, and never, ever react, no matter what she says, no matter how unfair it is. Can you handle that?" Beatrice blinked, clearly confused, but Megan saw something deeper in those eyes, a spark of determination born of absolute necessity. "When you have a child to feed, you can handle anything." "I can handle it, sir. I promise I won't let you down." Arthur nodded at Megan. "Megan, get her a uniform, now. Karen, you're on kitchen duty until you feel better. Beatrice, you're taking the floor." Karen started to protest, but another sob cut off her words. She knew she was in no condition to face that woman again, not so soon after last night's humiliation. Head bowed, she retreated to the back. Megan quickly guided Beatrice to the locker room, helping her into the restaurant's black and white uniform. As she adjusted the new girl's apron, Megan whispered urgently, "Beatrice, I don't know what Arthur told you, but this client is a nightmare. She's not just demanding, she's cruel. I've seen her make grown men cry over a misplaced fork. But you seem tough. Just remember, no matter what, keep your composure." Beatrice nodded, but Megan could see that the new employee didn't truly understand what she was about to face. How could she? This was something you had to experience to believe. When they returned to the dining room, the main door of the restaurant was swinging open. Megan felt her stomach lurch. The woman who entered wasn't particularly tall, maybe 5'5", but there was something in her posture, in the way her eyes swept the room as if she owned every atom of air, that made her seem monumental. Patricia Taylor was around 50, but it was impossible to know for sure due to the countless plastic surgeries that kept her skin unnaturally taut. Her platinum blonde hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and she wore a beige designer dress that probably cost Megan's annual salary. Jewels glittered at her neck, wrists, and fingers, each piece, screaming wealth and power. But it was her eyes that scared Megan the most. They were cold, calculating, the eyes of someone who saw other people not as human beings, but as pawns in a personal game of domination. Patricia Taylor walked to her usual table, the one by the window with a prime view of the tree-lined avenue, without looking at anyone. It was as if the staff were furniture, inanimate objects that simply existed to serve her. Arthur materialized by the table in seconds, his hands clasped in front of him in a posture of reverence Megan had never seen him adopt with any other customer. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Taylor. It's an honor to have you with us again. Your table is prepared exactly as you like it." Patricia didn't even look at him as she spoke, her eyes fixed on the menu she knew by heart, but always pretended to scrutinize as if for the first time. "We'll see about that. Where's Karen? I want to see if she's finally learned the difference between lukewarm and room temperature." The voice was soft, almost melodic, but it carried a venom that made Arthur swallow hard. Megan, positioned a few feet away, saw the manager struggle to maintain his composure. "Karen is feeling unwell today, ma'am, but we have another excellent professional who would be honored to serve you." Patricia's eyes finally lifted from the menu, and for the first time, she truly looked at Arthur. There was no anger in her gaze, just a cold, calculating interest, like a cat watching a wounded mouse. Unwell. How convenient. Is she crying in the back because she can't handle the pressure of doing her job properly? Such pathetic weakness. Arthur didn't reply, but Megan saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. Patricia smiled, a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Very well, Arthur. Bring me this new professional. Let's see if she has more of a spine than the last one." That was the signal. Arthur gave a discreet gesture, and Beatrice moved forward, her steps steady despite the obvious tension in her shoulders. Megan held her breath, praying silently that her new colleague would survive the next few minutes. Beatrice stopped beside the table, her notepad in hand, and waited. It was protocol. The server didn't speak first but waited to be acknowledged. Patricia let the silence stretch. 10 seconds. 20. 30. It was one of her favorite games, making the staff wait until the discomfort became almost unbearable. Finally, without looking at Beatrice, Patricia spoke. Water. Room temperature. Not chilled, not warm. And make it the French mineral water, not that domestic garbage you people try to push. Beatrice jotted it down calmly, and her voice came out clear and professional when she replied, "Certainly, ma'am. I'll get that for you right away. Would you like to hear the chef's specials for the day while you wait?" Patricia finally looked at Beatrice, her eyes sweeping the new server from head to toe in an appraisal clearly designed to intimidate. Megan knew that look. She'd seen Patricia use it on other waitresses. It was a look that said plainly, "You are inferior, you are replaceable, you do not matter." But something unexpected happened. Beatrice didn't lower her eyes. She didn't show fear or exaggerated subservience. She maintained respectful, professional eye contact, waiting for a response with a patience that seemed genuine rather than forced. Megan saw Patricia's expression shift subtly, a small frown line forming between her perfectly sculpted eyebrows. This wasn't going as she'd expected. "Where did you come from? What's your name?" The question was seemingly casual, but Megan knew there was nothing casual about Patricia Taylor. Every word was a potential trap. "My name is Beatrice Adams, ma'am. I started today." "Today? How fascinating. And before this, where did you work?" Megan felt her stomach tighten. Here it came, the personal interrogation, the invasion of privacy disguised as polite conversation. Patricia loved to collect information about the staff, little details she could later use as weapons. Beatrice hesitated for only a second before answering, her voice maintaining that professional calm that was beginning to visibly annoy the customer. "I've worked in a few different places, ma'am, but I was looking for a more stable position. Now, about the water, would you prefer sparkling or still?" It was a brilliant redirect, bringing the conversation back to the professional, refusing to be pulled into the personal. Megan almost smiled. Maybe Beatrice really did have what it took to survive here. Patricia, however, was not used to being redirected. Her lips thinned into a tight line. "Still." "And Beatrice, when I ask a question, I expect a full answer, not a deflection. Is that clear?" "Perfectly clear, ma'am. I'll get your water." Beatrice walked away with measured steps, neither too fast to show nervousness nor too slow to seem disrespectful. It was a perfect balance that impressed even Megan, who was watching the scene with a pounding heart. In the kitchen, Beatrice prepared the water with steady hands, checking the temperature with a thermometer with the precision of a scientist. Megan approached, her voice low and urgent. "You're doing great, but be careful. She's testing you. It's going to get worse." Beatrice looked at Megan, and for the first time she showed an emotion beyond calculated professionalism. It was exhaustion, a deep weariness that came from much more than this one day. "Megan, I've worked 3 different jobs in the last 5 years. I've dealt with screaming bosses, backstabbing co-workers, and harassing customers. I have a 5-year-old daughter at home who needs to eat, have clean clothes, and a roof over her head. If putting up with this bored, rich woman for a few hours means I can provide that, then that's what I'm going to do." There was something in the way Beatrice spoke that made Megan understand. This wasn't just determination born of desperation, it was the quiet strength of someone who had already fought much harder battles and survived. Patricia Taylor was powerful, yes, but in the end, she was just another obstacle in the path of a mother determined to protect her child. Beatrice returned to the dining room with the water on a silver tray, every movement deliberate and graceful. She placed the glass before Patricia with millimeter precision, the water at the exact temperature, no drips, no mistakes. "Your water, ma'am. It's 72 degrees, exactly room temperature." Patricia picked up the glass and drank slowly, her eyes never leaving Beatrice's face. Megan knew the customer was searching, desperately searching for some sign of fear, some crack in the professional armor that she could exploit. And then Patricia made her first mistake. She set the glass back on the table and said, with a smile that was pure sweetened poison, "Very good. Surprising for someone who just started today. Tell me, Beatrice, do you have children? You seem the type to have a child hanging off your skirt, getting in the way of your professional ambitions." The air in the restaurant seemed to chill. Megan saw Arthur across the room close his eyes briefly. That was a line Patricia rarely crossed so early, diving directly into someone's personal life. It was a sign she was frustrated, that the game wasn't going according to plan. Beatrice was silent for a moment, and Megan could see the internal war raging behind those brown eyes. Finally, she answered, her voice still professional, but with a note of steel that hadn't been there before. "I have a daughter, yes, ma'am. She's the reason I work so hard. Now, are you ready to order? Or would you like a few more minutes?" Patricia tilted her head, studying Beatrice like a scientist would study a particularly interesting specimen. There was something new in her expression now, not just irritation, but a genuine curiosity mixed with something darker. A daughter. How sweet. And the father. Does he help? Or are you doing it all on your own, like so many brave but foolish women out there? It was a thinly veiled insult, an attempt to wound, but Beatrice didn't take the bait. Instead, she simply repeated her previous question. "Are you ready to order, ma'am?" The entire restaurant seemed to be holding its breath. Megan had never seen anyone refuse to engage with Patricia like that, simply ignoring the personal attacks and holding firm to their professional role. It was either brave or suicidal, maybe both. Patricia Taylor watched Beatrice for another long moment, and then, surprisingly, she smiled. It wasn't a genuine smile of pleasure or satisfaction, but rather the smile of someone who had just found an interesting new toy to break. "Very well, Beatrice. I see you know how to maintain your professionalism. Admirable. I'll start with the arugula and parmesan salad, but I want the cheese shavings cut by hand, not with those awful machines that make everything too uniform. Then the porcini mushroom risotto. And for the wine, I want Robert to come personally to make the suggestion. No one else, just Robert." Beatrice noted everything with precision and withdrew, her movements still controlled and graceful. Megan let out a sigh of relief she didn't even know she'd been holding. Maybe the worst was over. Maybe Patricia had lost interest in this particular game. But Megan should have known better. Patricia Taylor never gave up that easily. For the next 40 minutes, Beatrice performed her duties with almost mechanical perfection. The salad arrived exactly as requested. The risotto was creamy and fragrant, and Robert gave his wine presentation with the elegance of an award-winning sommelier. Patricia ate in silence, which was even more unsettling than her usual cutting remarks. Megan watched from across the room, serving her own tables but keeping a constant eye on the unfolding situation. There was something wrong in the air, a calm before the storm. Patricia was too quiet, too thoughtful. She was planning something. When Beatrice arrived to clear the empty plates, Patricia finally broke her silence. Her voice was soft, almost friendly, which immediately set off every alarm in Megan's head. "Beatrice, you've done very well today. Truly impressive for a newcomer. Tell me your daughter, what's her name?" Beatrice hesitated, her fingers imperceptibly tightening on the edge of the plate she was holding. Megan saw the internal struggle happen again, the decision of how much to reveal, how much to keep guarded. "Julia, ma'am. Her name is Julia." "A beautiful name. And how old is she?" "5. Patricia nodded, as if just making polite conversation. But there was a glint in her eye that Megan recognized. It was the glint of the hunt of the predator who had just identified its prey's weak spot. 5. A lovely age, still so dependent on her mother, isn't she? It must be difficult to find quality childcare on a waitress's salary. Good daycare centers are so expensive in New York. Beatrice didn't answer immediately. Megan could see the tension building in her shoulders, the way her hands held the plates just a little more tightly. But when she spoke, her voice was firm. "We manage, ma'am. Julia is well taken care of." "I'm sure she is. You seem like the dedicated type. It's just that, well, New York is a big, dangerous city, especially for small children. So many things can go wrong. A mother needs to be sure she's making all the right choices, doesn't she?" The air in the room shifted. This was no longer a casual invasion of privacy. It was a veiled threat, so subtle it would be hard to prove, but clear enough for anyone paying attention. Megan felt her stomach churn. Patricia had crossed an invisible but crucial line. Arthur, who had been watching from a distance, took a step forward, but before he could intervene, Beatrice spoke. Her voice was different now, still professional, still controlled, but with a steely firmness that made even Patricia pause. "With all due respect, ma'am, my daughter is not an appropriate topic of conversation. May I bring you the dessert menu?" The entire restaurant seemed to have stopped. The other patrons, who had until then pretended not to notice the unfolding drama, were now staring openly. Karen, who had risked peeking out of the kitchen, was frozen by the door. Robert, the sommelier, held a bottle of wine in mid-air, forgotten. Patricia placed her napkin on the table with a slow, deliberate motion. When she looked at Beatrice, there was no longer any pretense of civility. Her eyes were pure ice. "No, Beatrice, you may not bring the dessert menu. What you can do is apologize for your insolence and remember your place in this establishment." Megan saw the exact moment something shifted in Beatrice. It wasn't anger or fear, but a cold, calculated resolve. It was the same determination she had shown earlier, but amplified, focused like a laser. Beatrice placed the plates back on the table carefully and looked directly into Patricia's eyes. When she spoke, her voice echoed clearly through the silent restaurant. "Mrs. Taylor, I know exactly what my place is. My place is to be a professional who treats all customers with respect and efficiency. I have done exactly that today. If you feel my service has been inadequate in any way, I can call the manager. But I will not apologize for setting appropriate boundaries when it comes to my daughter's safety and privacy." The silence that followed was absolute. Megan could hear her own heart beating, could hear Karen's ragged breath, the soft hum of the air conditioning. It was as if time had stopped. Patricia rose slowly, her face contorted in a mask. Her fury she no longer tried to hide. Her voice, when it came, was trembling with barely contained rage. "You have no idea who I am, girl. You have no idea what I can do. With one phone call, I can make sure you never work in a decent establishment in this city again. I can make your life impossible. And as for your precious Julia, well, it would be a shame if Child Protective Services started asking questions about whether a mother who works late in restaurants is really providing adequate care for such a young child." It was the final threat, the dirtiest weapon in Patricia's arsenal. Not just threatening Beatrice's job, but threatening her custody, her family, everything she held most precious in the world. Megan saw Beatrice turn pale, but the new waitress didn't back down. Instead, she took a step forward, her voice rising clearer than before. "You can do whatever you want to me. You can fire me. You can ruin my professional reputation. But threaten my daughter. That's not power, Mrs. Taylor. That's the empty cruelty of a person who has everything except what truly matters. Money can't buy decency. Influence doesn't fill an inner void. And no amount of humiliating others will ever make you feel less miserable about yourself." The room exploded, not in sound, but in motion. Arthur rushed to the table, his face white as a sheet. Karen let out a stifled cry. Robert dropped the wine bottle, which shattered on the floor in a burst of glass and red liquid. Patricia was shaking, her face red with rage and, surprisingly, something that looked like humiliation. No one, absolutely no one, had ever spoken to her that way. She pointed a trembling finger at Beatrice. "You're fired, fired immediately." "Arthur, if this woman is still in this restaurant in 5 minutes, I swear on everything holy my husband will shut this place down before the end of the week." Arthur was torn. Megan could see it on his face. It was his duty to protect Beatrice's job, but he also had a responsibility to all the other employees whose livelihoods depended on that restaurant staying open. It was an impossible choice. But before Arthur could speak, something unexpected happened. Karen stepped forward, her hands still trembling but her face determined. "No, enough, Patricia. Enough of the terror, enough of the humiliation. Beatrice is right. You can fire all of us if you want, but she stays." Megan felt the words leave her own mouth before she even thought them. "Me too. Beatrice stays or we all walk." Robert nodded, joining the group. One by one, the staff of the Gilded Terrace formed a line of solidarity behind Beatrice, a human wall of dignity against tyranny. Arthur looked at his team, at these people he had led for so many years, and something in his expression transformed. Weariness, yes, but also a resolve Megan had never seen before. He had spent years bowing and scraping, years swallowing his pride, years allowing this woman to turn his restaurant into a field of terror. And for what? For fear. Fear of losing his job. Fear of letting his team down. Fear of confronting the almost limitless power of Henry Taylor. But looking at Beatrice, a woman who had started that very day and who had more courage in her little finger than he had shown in years, Arthur felt something break inside him. It wasn't despair. It was liberation. He turned to Patricia, squaring his shoulders, and his voice came out firm, for the first time in years when dealing with her. "Mrs. Taylor, with all due respect, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the restaurant. Beatrice has acted with exemplary professionalism and does not deserve to be treated this way. No one does." The silence that followed was different from the others. It wasn't tense or frightening. It was expectant, charged with possibility. The other customers in the restaurant, who had been watching the drama with varying expressions of shock and discomfort, began to react. First, it was a man in a suit in the corner who started to clap slowly. Then an older woman joined in. Within seconds, the entire restaurant was applauding. Patricia looked around, her face a kaleidoscope of emotions, rage, shock, humiliation, and something that might have been fear. She was used to having power, used to people cowering before her, but here in this moment she had completely lost control. Her voice came out hoarse when she finally managed to speak. "You have no idea what you've just done. My husband will hear about this in minutes. He will level this place. All of you will bitterly regret this ridiculous decision." She grabbed her designer handbag and marched toward the door, her high heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. At the door, she stopped and turned one last time, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on Beatrice. "You will regret crossing me, Beatrice Adams, I guarantee it." And then she was gone, leaving behind a restaurant in stunned silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, reality began to sink in. What had they just done? Had they really stood up to Patricia Taylor? Had they really thrown out the owner's wife? Arthur was the first to break the silence, his voice trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was starting to fade. "Everyone back to work. We have customers waiting and, well, we're still a restaurant. At least for now." There was a note of gallows humor in his voice that made a few employees laugh nervously. Megan walked over to Beatrice, who looked like she was in shock, finally grasping the magnitude of what had happened. "Are you okay?" That was incredible, but it was also completely insane. Beatrice shook her head slowly. "I didn't want this. I didn't want all of you to risk your jobs for me. I couldn't let her threaten my daughter." Karen placed a hand on Beatrice's shoulder, her eyes still red from her earlier tears, but now there was something different in them, something like hope. "You did what all of us have wanted to do for years, Beatrice. You stood your ground. We might not have jobs tomorrow, but at least we got our dignity back today." The next few hours passed in a strange haze. The restaurant kept running, but there was a tension in the air, as if everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. The customers, who had witnessed the confrontation, left generous tips and words of encouragement. A few even asked to speak to Arthur personally, to express their support. But everyone knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. When the shift finally ended and the last customers had left, the team gathered in the kitchen. No one wanted to go home, as if by staying together they could somehow protect each other from what was coming. Arthur sat at one of the prep tables, his face in his hands. When he looked up, he seemed to have aged 10 years in a few hours. "I have to be honest with you all. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Henry Taylor has the power to shut this place down with a snap of his fingers. He has the power to make sure none of us ever work in a high-end establishment in this city again, and if he decides to do that, there's nothing I can do to stop him." Megan felt her stomach clench. She had rent to pay, bills piling up. She couldn't afford to be unemployed. But when she looked at Beatrice, when she remembered that brave woman defending her child against a far more powerful threat, she couldn't regret what they had done. Robert, the sommelier, broke the heavy silence. So we wait. But we wait together. And if Mr. Taylor comes in tomorrow wanting to fire everyone, then he'll have to look each and every one of us in the eye when he does it. There were murmurs of agreement around the kitchen. Beatrice, who had been quiet since Patricia left, finally spoke. I'm so sorry I put you all in this position. If it helps, I can leave now. I can talk to Mr. I can. Taylor directly take full responsibility. No, absolutely not, Arthur said, standing up. This wasn't your fault, Beatrice. It was my fault. I should have put a stop to this years ago. I knew Patricia's behavior was unacceptable, but I was too much of a coward to do anything about it. You just had the courage I lacked. He straightened up. All of you should go home now. Get some rest. Tomorrow, whatever happens, we'll face it together. One by one, the staff began to leave. Megan waited for Beatrice, walking with her to the back door where they kept their personal belongings. As Beatrice picked up her simple bag, Megan noticed a small picture frame that had fallen out of the side pocket. It was a photo of Beatrice with a little girl with brown curls and a wide smile. Julia. The child was hugging her mother's neck, both of them laughing for the camera in a moment of pure joy. It was clearly an old photo, taken in better times, but Megan could see the absolute love radiating from it. She's beautiful. She looks just like you. Beatrice picked up the photo carefully, running a thumb over her daughter's image. She's my everything, all that matters. That's why I couldn't let that woman threaten her, no matter the cost. The two women stepped out into the New York night, the air still warm and humid even at that late hour. As they parted ways, Megan called out to Beatrice, "Hey Beatrice, thank you for reminding us that some things are more important than being afraid." Beatrice smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "See you tomorrow, if there's still a tomorrow for us here." Megan watched Beatrice walk toward the bus stop, her small solitary figure set against the city lights. There was something almost heroic in that image, an ordinary woman who had done something extraordinary simply by refusing to accept the unacceptable. Meanwhile, in a penthouse on the Upper East Side, Patricia Taylor was in her enormous walk-in closet, furiously throwing shoes and handbags into an open suitcase. Her husband, Henry, stood in the doorway, watching with an expression she couldn't decipher. Patricia turned to her husband, her face still red with rage and humiliation. "You will not believe what happened today. Those ungrateful employees, that incompetent manager, they threw me out. They threw me out of your restaurant. I want you to shut that place down tomorrow. I want them all on the street. Especially that new waitress, that Beatrice Adams. I want her to never get a job anywhere decent in this city again." Henry Taylor was 62, with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen a lot over 4 decades of building his empire. He watched his wife continue her tirade, tossing more clothes into the suitcase, and felt something that had been growing inside him for years finally crystallize into a decision. "Patricia, sit down. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about. You need to act. Your reputation is on the line. You can't let low-level employees treat your wife this way." Henry walked to the bed and sat down heavily, his shoulders slumped under the weight of years of complicit silence. "Patricia, I know. I've always known." She stopped packing, turning slowly to face him. "Known what?" "About your behavior at the restaurant, about how you treat the staff. I get reports, Patricia. I have for years. I know about the humiliation, the psychological abuse, the threats. I know everything." Patricia's face went pale. "And you never said anything. You never did." "Anything?" Henry shook his head, and there was a deep sadness in his eyes. "To my eternal shame, no. I told myself it wasn't my business, that as long as you didn't interfere with the actual operations of the restaurant, I could look the other way. I was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. And today, when my assistant called to tell me what happened, what you said to that woman, what you threatened to do to her child, I knew it was time to stop pretending." Patricia laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You're getting sentimental over some random waitress, over a woman who probably can't even properly support her own child. Her daughter is 5, Patricia, the same age our granddaughter Isabella was when you started pushing me away from her. When you decided our son wasn't raising her properly, when you started making trouble in the family until they moved to Los Angeles just to get some peace." Patricia stiffened. That was different. I was protecting the family's reputation. No, you were exercising control because it's the only way you know how to relate to people. And I let it happen because it was easier than confronting you. But not anymore. Henry stood up, his decision clearly made. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the restaurant. I'm going to personally apologize to Beatrice Adams and to every member of the staff. I'm going to guarantee them all job security and give them a substantial bonus to compensate for the years of abuse they've suffered. And you, Patricia, are permanently banned from the Gilded Terrace and any of my other establishments. Patricia's eyes widened. You can't do that. We're married. I have rights. And about the marriage, well, I think we both know that's been over for a long time. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. You'll get what's fair financially, but I want you out of my life, Patricia. I want peace. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror without feeling ashamed. Patricia stood there, trembling, not with rage now, but with something close to fear. Her entire adult life she had been Henry Taylor's wife. She had been somebody. Without him, without that last name, without that power by association, who was she? You'll regret this, Henry. I'll fight you. I'll make this divorce so nasty you'll beg to take it back. Henry looked at her with an expression of profound pity. Do what you have to do, Patricia, but it won't change anything. My mind is made up. He walked out of the room, leaving her alone with her half-packed suitcases and the shattered reality of her life. Patricia sat down slowly on the bed, looking around the immense closet, filled with expensive clothes and luxury accessories that suddenly seemed empty and meaningless. The next morning, the staff of the Gilded Terrace arrived at the restaurant with a mixture of fear and determination. No one had slept well. They all expected to be fired, but they had made a promise to face it together. Beatrice was the last to arrive, having dropped Julia off with a neighbor before taking 3 buses to get to work. She walked in through the back door, prepared for the worst, and found the entire team gathered in the kitchen, their faces pale but resolute. Arthur approached her, his expression grim. Henry Taylor is here. He arrived 10 minutes ago. He's waiting in the office and asked to speak with me first, then with you. Beatrice nodded, her heart pounding. This was it. This was the end. She thought of Julia, of how she would explain to her little girl that Mommy had lost another job. But even facing imminent loss, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Her daughter was worth any sacrifice. Arthur returned 20 minutes later, and his expression was so strange that no one could decipher it. He looked around at the assembled team, and then, surprisingly, he began to smile. Everyone, we're not getting fired. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Megan was the first to find her voice. What do you mean, the opposite? Henry Taylor just offered me a raise for all of us. He also created a retroactive bonus for the last 5 years to compensate for what he called a hostile work environment created by his wife. What's more, he's divorcing her and has permanently banned her from all of his establishments. The silence was absolute. Then someone whooped, and suddenly everyone was talking at once, laughing, crying, hugging each other. It was impossible to believe. They hadn't just kept their jobs, they had won. But Arthur held up a hand to quiet the celebrations. Beatrice, he wants to speak with you now in the office. Beatrice felt her stomach clench again. Why would the owner want to speak to her specifically? She walked to the small office at the back of the restaurant, her legs trembling slightly. Henry Taylor was sitting behind the desk, but stood up when she entered. He was an imposing man, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that comes from decades of commanding boardrooms full of powerful executives. But his eyes were kind, tired, but kind. Ms. Adams, please, have a seat. Beatrice sat in the indicated chair, her hands clasped in her lap to hide their shaking. Henry studied her for a moment before speaking. I want to thank you. I know that must sound strange considering the circumstances, but you gave me something I've needed for a very long time, a reason to finally do the right thing. Beatrice blinked, confused. Sir, I don't understand. Henry sighed heavily. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, has been cruel to the staff of this restaurant for years. I knew it. I got reports heard rumors, saw the evidence. But I never had the courage to confront her because it was easier to ignore. Until yesterday, when she threatened your daughter's safety when she crossed that specific line, I couldn't hide behind excuses anymore. You see, I have a granddaughter the same age as your Julia, and my wife pushed me away from her, created so many problems that my son had to move his family to another city. When I heard what she said to you, it was as if I finally saw clearly who she really was, who I had allowed her to become by never setting any boundaries. He paused, his hands flat on the desk. Beatrice didn't know what to say. This was so different from what she had imagined that her mind struggled to process it. Henry continued, his voice thick with restrained emotion. I want to make some changes. First, you are officially a permanent employee with a salary 20% above the standard rate. Second, I'm creating an educational fund for the children of all employees. Julia will have her education guaranteed through college, if you'll accept. And third, I'm transferring full management of this restaurant to Arthur. He will have complete autonomy. I'll remain the owner on paper, but I will no longer interfere in the daily operations. This place needs to be a healthy environment, and clearly, I'm not capable of ensuring that while my presence is so tied to what's happened here. Beatrice felt tears welling in her eyes. It was too much. All of it was simply too much to process. Mr. Taylor, I don't know what to say. I just did what any mother would do. I don't deserve all this. Henry smiled, a sad but genuine smile. It's precisely because you think that way that you do deserve it. You stood up for what was right without expecting a reward. That's what makes you special. And Beatrice, about that threat my wife made about Child Protective Services, I want you to know that would never under any circumstances happen. I've already made sure of that personally. You are clearly a wonderful and dedicated mother. Beatrice couldn't hold it in any longer, and the tears began to fall freely. They weren't tears of sadness, but of pure, overwhelming relief. For so long she had fought alone, had carried the entire weight of providing for Julia with no safety net. And now, suddenly, everything had changed. Thank you, sir. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Henry nodded and stood, extending his hand. Beatrice shook it, feeling the firm, heavy weight of his handshake. Now go celebrate with your team. You've all earned it. Beatrice left the office and was immediately swallowed up in hugs from her new colleagues. There was laughter, tears of joy, and a sense of victory that felt almost surreal. But the story wasn't over. 2 months passed. The Gilded Terrace flourished under Arthur's new management. He implemented policies of respect and dignity that completely transformed the work environment. Customers noticed the change, the lighter, more positive energy, and the restaurant became even more popular. As for Beatrice, she became a beloved figure not just at the restaurant, but in the wider community. The story of what had happened had spread, first through the customers who witnessed the confrontation, then through social media, and finally even a few articles on local labor rights blogs. A hospitality workers' union contacted her, asking her to lead workshops on workplace bullying and employee rights. Beatrice initially hesitated, feeling unqualified for the role, but Megan and the others encouraged her. You have a voice that needs to be heard, Beatrice. How many other people are going through what we went through and don't? Have the courage to stand up. You can help them. So Beatrice accepted, starting to give talks on her day off. It was strange and scary at first, standing in front of rooms full of people and telling her story. But each time, she saw faces that understood, that had their own stories of abuse and humiliation, and she knew she was doing something important. Julia was thriving too. With the financial stability and the guaranteed education fund, Beatrice was able to enroll her in a better school and even found time for extracurriculars like dance class, something the little girl had always dreamed of, but had been beyond their means before. One Saturday afternoon, the restaurant was having a small celebration for the staff, a barbecue in the back patio that Arthur had organized to commemorate 2 months of the new era at the Gilded Terrace. Everyone was there, current staff and even some former employees who had left, but wanted to come back to celebrate the change. Beatrice was laughing at one of Robert's jokes when she saw a familiar figure walk hesitantly through the side gate. The laughter died in her throat. It was Patricia Taylor, but a very different Patricia from the arrogant, cruel woman of 2 months ago. Her platinum blonde hair had grown out, showing dark roots, and was pulled back in a simple ponytail without its former sophistication. She wore jeans and a plain blouse, with no jewelry besides a discreet watch. But it was her face that showed the biggest change. The hard lines of arrogance had softened, replaced by something that looked like genuine vulnerability. The celebration gradually fell silent, as more people noticed the unexpected visitor. Arthur took a protective step forward, but Patricia held up a hand. "Please, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted, if it's allowed, to speak with Beatrice for a moment. Then I'll leave, I promise." All eyes turned to Beatrice. She felt her heart race, not with fear this time, but with uncertainty. What could this woman possibly want after everything that had happened? But there was something in the way Patricia stood there, so different, so diminished, that made Beatrice nod. "Okay, we can talk." They moved away from the group, walking to a quieter corner of the patio. Patricia looked at Beatrice, and there were tears in her eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed to come here and thank you." Beatrice blinked, confused. "Thank me?" Patricia nodded, wiping away tears with the back of her hand. "You forced me to look at myself. Really look. And what I saw was hideous. I had become a cruel, empty person, using my money and influence to hurt others because I had nothing genuine in my own life. My marriage was dead for years. My son doesn't speak to me. My granddaughter doesn't even know me. I had everything materially and nothing that actually matters." She paused, her voice trembling. "After Henry filed for divorce, after I lost everything I thought defined me, I fell apart. Completely. I ended up seeking help, started therapy, and slowly, very slowly, I'm trying to become a better person. Not to get my old life back, that's gone, and it should be, but to maybe one day be able to look in the mirror and recognize someone decent looking back." Beatrice studied the other woman's face, searching for signs of manipulation or falsehood, but all she saw was exhaustion, genuine regret, and a fragile hope for redemption. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, Patricia. What you said about my daughter, the threats you made, that hurt me deeply, but I can see that you're trying to change, and that, at least, is a start." Patricia nodded, more tears falling. "It's all I can ask for, a start. Thank you, Beatrice, for your courage, for your strength. You saved me from myself, even if that wasn't your intention." She started to turn to leave, but Beatrice called out to her. "Patricia, wait. Real change takes time and constant work. Don't give up. You can become the person you want to be, but it will take more courage than anything you've done before." Patricia looked at Beatrice with something close to admiration. "How are you so wise? How can you be so kind after everything?" Beatrice thought of Julia, of all the struggles she had faced, of all the times she had to be strong when she wanted to fall apart. "Because I learned that holding on to anger and bitterness only hurts me, and because I have a daughter who taught me that everyone deserves a chance to grow and get better. Even you, the two." Women looked at each other for another moment, not as friends, perhaps they could never be friends, but as two people who had been catalysts for profound change in each other's lives. Then Patricia turned and left, and this time there was a hint of peace in her posture. Beatrice returned to the party, where she was immediately surrounded by concerned questions. She smiled and reassured everyone that she was fine, that everything was fine. That night, after the celebration ended and everyone had gone home, Beatrice took her 3 buses back to her small apartment. Julia was waiting with the neighbor, already in her pajamas, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mommy, Auntie said you'd be home soon. Can you read me a story before bed?" Beatrice scooped her daughter into her arms, feeling the comfortable, familiar weight of the child against her chest. "Of course I can, my love. I'll read you all the stories you want." Later, after Julia had fallen asleep, Beatrice sat on her small couch, looking around her modest but clean apartment. She didn't have much. In material terms, she was still far from what many people would consider successful. But she had security, she had dignity, she had her healthy, happy daughter, and more importantly, She had proven to herself that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to do what was right, even when you were absolutely terrified. It was standing up to injustice, even when it seemed there was no chance of winning. It was refusing to bow your head to tyranny, no matter the cost. Looking at the photo of Julia on her nightstand, Beatrice smiled. Her daughter would grow up knowing that her mother had faced something terrifying and had won, not through force or power, but through the simple refusal to accept being treated as less than human. And that, Beatrice realized, was the most valuable lesson she could ever teach. That dignity is the only truly non-negotiable asset, that all people deserve respect, regardless of their position or circumstance, and that a single person doing the right thing at the right moment can change not only their own life, but the lives of everyone around them. The Gilded Terrace continued to thrive, becoming known not just for its exceptional food, but as a model for what a workplace should be. Beatrice continued her workshops, reaching more and more people and inspiring change in establishments all over the city. Henry reconnected with his son and granddaughter, beginning the long process of rebuilding the relationships he had neglected. Patricia continued her therapy, and though the road was long and difficult, she persisted, determined to become someone she could be proud of. And Julia grew up in a home filled with love, security, and examples of real courage. She learned from a young age that true power doesn't come from money or position, but from strength of character and the willingness to stand up for what is right. Years later, when Julia was a teenager and asked her mother about that day that changed their lives, Beatrice said something the girl would never forget. "My love, I learned that we can be scared and be brave at the same time. That doing the right thing is rarely easy, but it's always worth it. And that every one of us has the power to choose what kind of person we want to be, what kind of world we want to create. I chose not to bow to cruelty, and that choice brought us here." And there, in that moment, in her simple apartment filled with love, Beatrice Adams knew she had made the right choices, not for recognition or reward, but because it was who she was, who she had chosen to be, a mother, a worker, a fighter, and above all, a woman who refused to lose her dignity, no matter the price. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Beatrice and her journey of courage has touched your hearts deeply. This narrative teaches us that true strength comes from within, from the refusal to accept injustice, even when facing far more powerful adversaries. Beatrice showed us that a single person, standing up for what is right, can not only transform their own life but can light the way for everyone around them. If this story of resistance, dignity, and redemption resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this. Click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the emotional narratives we have in store. Give us a thumbs up if Beatrice earned your respect and admiration, and in the comments share with us, have you ever had to stand up for your dignity in a difficult situation? What lessons did Beatrice's story leave with you? Your opinion is important to us and enriches our community. Every day we bring you stories that explore the complexity of human life, the strength of the spirit, and the choices that define us. Join us on this emotional journey until the next story.